There was a quote I had heard, and someone had said, look at this picture of me when I was younger. It's like every picture of you is a picture of you when you were younger because it's just a snapshot of a moment in time.
What if
Well,
someone walked up to you and was like, "Hey, look at this picture of me when I was older"?
we have lost so much more than it seems like on the surface. Obviously, the lives due to the pandemic and health crises and the mental health crisis and so many other things, the relationships, many close friends and family that maybe you had healthy conversations with at other times that now those conversations aren't so healthy, or you might not even be talking because you said one thing or they said one thing, and now that relationship has at least been suspended for a time. And it really changes you generally when you're put in a position of, well, now I feel more isolated than ever. Like, we're more connected than ever, but connected to a screen, connected to a phone, connected to a device. I mean, what are we watching this on? I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm saying that there's an inherent something that's gained from that, but there's also an inherent something that's lost from that. And so I think that there's so many things about our lives that we just now think are normal. There's so much that life has to offer that we're just missing because our heads are buried in our phones or in our tablets or in social media accounts and TikTok and all these other things, that really, when you take time to get out of your own mind or your own house and live life and experience all that life has to offer, there's so much more to life than what we've been experiencing. There's no time like the present to do it because there's no time other than the present. At every moment in time, it's always the present.
Yes.
But if you say that you'll do it tomorrow, well, no, you'll do it today, just a later today, because tomorrow will still be today when tomorrow comes. If you're going to put something off, why? Why are you putting it off? What is more important? Why wait? If you can do it now, do it now if it's important enough. If someone hurt you, the best thing that you can do is forgive them. And the best thing that they can do is forgive themselves. You can't change the past. Living in that shadow is never going to bring a better outcome. The past was in the past. Let's learn from the past and maybe guard ourselves or be more prepared for the future. But that doesn't define who you are today. It defines who you were, and you define who you are today based on what you've experienced in the past or what you've learned from other people who have experienced things in the past. And that's literally the entire point of this podcast, is just to gain knowledge and wisdom and experience and hear new perspectives and opinions that you may not have yet been exposed to, and solutions to societal issues be proposed that maybe people can find value in and move forward with their life through work and sacrifice in a way that we're all better for it. And each of us is
Right.
better for it through taking the time to really listen and learn and grow.
I agree. There's a whole another side of the spectrum too. That's why I think work is good, because you're forced to interact with people.
Mhm.
You're forced to get out, do things for yourself. You're forced to keep yourself running. You're basically forcing yourself to live life.
Yeah. You're seeing the tangible value that you are bringing to other people.
The ultimate reward in working hard is the sense of pride. And it's crazy how life is, suspended in the universe, right? And everything's balanced. The
Mhm.
way the solar system almost looks like it's tailored. But it's
Yeah.
everything's in its own balance. Everything's working with each other, and nothing's out of place. It's beautiful, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that being aware of all dimensions of perspective and possibilities and potential is something that we can all benefit from.
And I think we can
Go
also
ahead.
benefit from doing the opposite as well. You know how they say ignorance is bliss.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, true.
It's good to take
Yeah,
time to just not worry.
true.
Even when
Yep.
something, it feels like you have to worry about it, you have to have the self-control to make yourself not worry. Unless it's something important, right? But I mean, can't be about every little thing, right?
True. Yeah, so good. Pick your battles. Not everything is worth fighting tooth and nail. There's some things that are more important
Yeah.
to focus on what's most important, and to focus really on what you can control about your life. I think it's the serenity prayer is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I can't control recognize the things I can control and know the difference. And that there's some things you can control in life, there's some things you can't control in life. And if you stress yourself out and you're super anxious and depressed about things you can't control, it's unnecessary and it's never going to change through any of your action. But you do have control over some things. The only way that your life is going to get better is to understand the difference between what you can control and what you can't control, and then to have the courage to act on that which you can control to influence things for the better.
It's good to be aware of your patterns and then try to deviate one day and just see what happens. Life moves in cycles. I feel like sometimes it's really easy to get caught up in a cycle, and sometimes all you need to get out of a funk is just to deviate from the pattern a little bit. And it may not work the first time. Just gotta try a lot of things. You never know what you're gonna actually like. Sometimes it feels like it's really difficult to figure out what you really want to do, what makes you happy, and what needs to be done. All those things are kind of separate. You can't really have too much of any of them. I think balance is just, I don't know if everyone's trying to find it, but
It's healthy.
I think it's something that's necessary.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everything in
To
moderation.
to keep things functioning. That's what I've been learning. All the new experiences I've been experiencing. Everything's kind of connected in that sort of
Absolutely.
way. I think that's just good advice for anybody.
I'm glad that we were able to get your mic working again in terms
Yeah,
of being able to hear you clearly. I had a lot of fun in this discussion. I did more
me too,
talking than I
Peter.
had planned on, but we covered way more topics than we had planned on as well. A lot of tangents too. I didn't mean to take up a bunch of the time.
Oh, you're
There's
good.
so much there to unpack that you can't do it in just one episode. Hello, welcome back. Sorry about that. We had some technical difficulties, either with internet or with hardware. Either way, we did get the audio working, but we could not get Casey's video working. So we will continue, but there will only be one side of the video. Thankfully, we do have audio that is clear and legible. Is legible as like comes to writing. I don't know if that's also with audio as
Yeah,
well,
that's
but
correct.
okay, yeah. All right, so I'm not exactly sure where we had left off, but let's go ahead and talk about the topic of upbringing. And so I've talked a little bit in previous episodes about where I've come from in terms of the West Coast and my experiences here with either affordability or politics, things like that for my area of the Pacific Northwest and of Oregon and the climate here. But you have a slightly different experience. Your upbringing was in Hawaii, is that correct?
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about being raised in one of the best vacation spots in the Pacific.
I grew up kind of on the other side of the island from where the airport is,
Okay.
or where most of the tourism happens.
Of which
So,
island?
Oahu.
Oh, okay.
It's one of the kind of the small ones.
Yeah.
But it's really nice. No problems with the weather, ever, almost. I mean, it kind of rains a lot, but it's not too bad.
Yeah.
But it's really comfortable. I grew up in a 8-person household. I have a big family. I still live in that household because everywhere is freaking expensive.
Yeah, that's true.
It's very, very expensive. The land
Yeah.
value is kind of high.
Makes sense. Especially in Hawaii where everything's imported. When I was there, at least, it was only a 4% state tax. I was there maybe 2004 or 2006, somewhere in that realm. And I remember just the culture shock of, oh, it started raining or just like a heavy mist, but it was warm and it was comfortable. I like that word. It was comfortable. But you could
Mhm.
drive around the entire island and the ocean water was warm. Here, it's like you go to the coast for the tourism. You don't really necessarily always go to the coast
To
for
go in the water.
the water. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you might like the sand of the beach or the wind for flying a kite and other touristy stuff, saltwater taffies and aquarium. Or we have a lot of like fish canneries. Well, I don't know if that's the right word. Like processing plants for sea life, whether it be fish or seafood,
Like a fishing industry.
crabs. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so Pacific Seafood specifically has a plant in our area or nearby on the coast, close to where I live. Well,
That's
close is
really cool.
relative.
I love seafood. I don't know how to cook it though. Never cooked because the restaurant I'm in is Italian. So it's mainly like
Oh,
pasta and
okay, nice.
chicken and you know
Yeah.
sausage, pizza.
Oh, fun. Is it a family, like a local thing, or is it like a big corporation chain?
It's pretty small. It started with this like one dude who built a chain from something really small. It's still growing. It's like one of those. I mean, I used to work with Josh at
Yeah.
Ruby Tuesday. That's a pretty big chain.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, for sure.
the conditions there were just not as good, I don't think. And
Yeah.
it took me a kind of a long time to realize.
Yeah, for sure. You're really glad you moved on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Moved on from Ruby Tuesdays
Yeah,
into
yeah,
a
yeah.
more local
Something
restaurant where you
smaller.
like the
Yeah.
team feel, the atmosphere, and the people you work with is a lot more
Yes.
localized, decentralized. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's the right word.
It doesn't
Yeah.
feel as industry.
Industry. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I worked at Wendy's. And so, well, it was a business owner who owned 3 franchises, and they did business as Wendy's. So they had contracts and they had to meet certain criteria or update restaurants or things like that. And then they would get all their marketing stuff, their logo stuff, their branding from certain manufacturers or distributors. And so it wasn't necessarily, it was just franchises. It was part
Hmm.
of a bigger chain, but it was still local. There were some things that we had a lot more control over. Like if you ever read the back of, say, a coupon, it might say participating locations only, because only certain owners or franchises are respecting those coupons, things like that. So there was less agency in some respects, but more in other respects. But I definitely noticed that working for a chain is very different than working for, say, like a much smaller business in terms of family business, or one that's been around for a long time, or even just a recent startup, but super small scale compared to
Right.
Amazon,
Right.
Coca-Cola, yeah, any
It's a
big
very big
name
difference.
brand, yeah. Do you have any Amazon processing facilities out there? I know that we have one pretty close to our house.
I don't think so. I don't think
Okay.
so. I use Amazon kind of a lot. I mean, that's kind of the only way to get stuff in Hawaii.
Yeah,
I mean,
makes sense.
some local stuff, but pretty small island.
Do you still get
Most
free
everything
shipping?
is shipped.
Free 2-day shipping?
Yeah, usually if
That's
you have
legit.
Prime.
Yeah, that's true. It's so cool. I mean, like
Sometimes.
it's definitely affected or noticed. If you live in a lower income area, it might feel like you have more money because of the cost of things. But if you're buying things that are the same price for people, regardless of your zip code or your location, then certainly it could feel that you make a lot less. And so in a global industry where a lot of things are purchased online, and it might take into account your zip code or shipping address when it's factoring in, say, taxes, but it might be the same $5 or $10 for the item, no matter if you're making 120K, which might be a
Yeah,
low income for the area that you're in, or if you're making, say, 27,000, which might be a high income for an area that you're in. And that, I mean, that's specifically speaking of US culture. I know that there's many other areas around the world that make a lot less than that,
well,
and so
actually
have less
about that,
access. Yeah, go ahead.
a lot of the stuff in Hawaii is
Mhm.
mostly imported, right? So
Yeah.
it's pretty expensive. So when I'm buying stuff online, or like when I go to other countries, everything seems a lot cheaper because of the localization
Yeah.
of the goods.
There's less hands that touch
Yeah,
it. Yeah, 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 for
it
sure.
definitely feels like when I travel, like I can just spend whatever, like buy all this here.
Yeah.
Why not?
Because the money goes further specifically, yeah. Or at least
Yeah,
relative to what you know. Yeah. When we were there, gas was, I think, something like 4 times more expensive than it was here.
dude.
And
Gas is stupid right now. It's
what is
like
it in Hawaii right
it's
now?
almost $6
Oh,
per
okay,
gallon.
wow.
It's retarded.
Yeah.
Or
I
I
think
don't
it
know if I
fell
can say
here
that word.
from, I think just today, and the cheapest one in the area, I think it was like 4.35, but that was, again, it's probably fallen 80 cents within the last month or so, or less, just 3 weeks.
Yeah, the gas has been killing my budget, honestly,
Yeah, for
so
sure.
much.
How much do
But
you, well, I mean, I don't know if you had factored it out. I think like with our 2 cars at around $4 a gallon, we were budgeting spending about, well, because we had to, give or take like 3,500 a year, which is a lot for just fuel, because that's not factoring into account like all the maintenance and depreciation of the vehicle or loans or anything else. But how much do you drive or commute or use in, say, like a given week, or like how often do you fill up your tank?
I drive a lot because the place I work at is on the other side of the island.
Okay.
So I usually just have to drive across the island
Yeah.
to work. But I take the H3, so it's fast because
Hmm.
it's like one of the most efficient highways, I think.
Okay, nice.
But take the H3 and then I come back. It's like 20 minutes. So not too bad, honestly.
20 minutes
But
one way or there and back?
yeah, one way, 20 minutes
Okay.
one way. There and
Yeah.
back is like an hour, or maybe 40, 50 minutes. But
Okay. That's pretty standard, like commute within 30 minutes to an hour. I mean, an hour commute, my in-laws, my wife's parents both work about 45 minutes to an hour away. And it's, they both have to
damn.
work full time just because they have that many expenses. We do too. I mean, we have slightly less expenses.
That's why gas is so freaking high. So like,
Yeah.
because we don't have to drive anywhere. I'm like, oh, my drive is all the way across the island, and you're like, oh, like, that's nothing.
I'm not saying that's nothing. I mean, like 15-minute commute or 20-minute commute. Like, I know that insurance charges higher rates based on, or may charge higher rates based on the average distance that your work is away from your primary residence, or how many average miles you might drive in a day. Just because if you're on the road more, then obviously you're at a higher risk of being in an accident and being a liability or causing them some kind of payment on your behalf. Yeah, I think 20 minutes is a pretty standard commute for, well, in low or less populated areas. I think in higher populated areas, it might only be, say, like 3 to 10 miles, but because of traffic. I recently heard someone in Texas talking about traffic, but I know here, like Portland, and then in Seattle, there's even more, but they have ways that they deal with it with the express lanes that change direction based on if it's more traffic going into the city or out of the city in the morning or evening. And then even LA, New York, there's some places that have more infrastructure built in terms of metro or transit, public transit, subway, that kind of thing, say like New York, just because the volume of people that live there, they might need to get around, but don't want to be taking an hour to go 40 blocks. Yeah, traffic is certainly a big killer when it comes to how long your commute is. It may only be 10 miles or 15 miles, but it might take you 2 hours to get there if there's just that many people that are on the roads.
Yeah, bro, they're trying to build a monorail.
Ooh,
It took so long,
yeah.
so much wasted money, still not done.
Yeah.
And I don't understand it either because such a like I feel like Oahu is a really small island. Like,
Oh, yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, you don't
Yeah,
need a monorail
yeah.
there.
Less than an hour to drive around it, basically. Or
I'd say probably more than an hour, but
okay.
really, it's not like it's negligible, right?
Yeah.
It's a freaking island. Like, you don't need a monorail on an island.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I know
But
that there's a lot of stuff that's happening outside of the US, especially in terms of light rail or monorail. Like especially like with bullet trains, the magnetism, you can get very long distances in a very short period of time,
right.
or in a very efficient way with much less congestion or much less fuel used, that kind of thing, if it's based on the demand and how many people actually use it. But if it's an efficient system that is affordable, more people might opt into some of those options. But it's not always feasible for people who say live in rural areas and there isn't that much congestion, and most people just get used to the fact that, oh, okay, I have to drive country roads or highway about 4 or 5 miles. It takes about 5 minutes to go about 4 or 5 miles to go to the grocery store or more. You know those things going into living in rural communities, in that
Right.
you can't just walk down the street all the time and just go to a grocery store or a restaurant or a coffee house. Well, now coffee houses are actually everywhere. Probably you can just walk down the street and get to a coffee house.
Starbucks.
Yeah.
Every corner,
Yeah.
Starbucks.
Yeah. We talked about blocks. I grew up in a town of about 3,000, a little bit over. And my dad was the mayor for 6 years, but then he was traveling for work and wasn't able to make it to the city council meetings. And so we had moved at that point to another city, but at the time, I think it only had about 900, give or take, maybe only about 600. And then they built a new housing development a little bit further down from our house. But at that point, yeah, it was just rural areas that there aren't, I mean, there might be a convenience store or some antique shops or a museum, but that's pretty much it. We just got used to talking in country blocks because my school was basically a union high school, or it used to be a union high school, 5 rural towns that all combined into one central district. And all of the schools, so the primary school, intermediate intermediate school that used to be the elementary school, the middle school and the high school were all on the same country block. You basically just cross a road and you're on a new campus. It was just interesting, but it's like a country block isn't 900 or 1,000 feet. It might be a mile or 2.5 miles or something, depending on how big the farmland is. I know that there's a lot of farmland here for hops or for just flowers. For what's another big one here? We have hazelnuts, or filberts as they're known to the locals. And so we're a very big producer of a lot of those things. And so while like Iowa or some other places like that might be known for, or Kansas might be known for corn, we're known for those. And so there's a lot of large farmland where there's like grain or hay and just a ton of acreage.
Oh, that's
And
really cool.
yeah, and there's a lot of like berries too, like berry farms. And so they have like a you pick this fruit, you pick these oranges or strawberries, and then you pay per pound or based on weight. That way they don't have to pay for the labor. You get it cheaper, and then you get the experience of like freshly picked stuff. And
Right.
so it's an honor system, of course. Like if you pick it and eat it on the farm, then like, but in smaller communities, you don't often have a lot of the same problems because you're much closer to the people, and everyone to a certain degree is, knows someone who knows someone, or you're on a first name basis with a family or many families in the area, and news travels fast in small towns and in small
Oh
schools.
yeah.
If one person does one thing, now their family is shamed, everyone will always remember it, kind of thing. And that's what part of my upbringing was I wasn't the best child, absolutely not in any way, shape, form, or capacity. And so going to the same district in the same set of small towns, it's about 4A, so there's about 140 to 150 kids per grade, but most of them, probably about 70 to 80% were there the entire upbringing, the entire K through 12. And so my peers who had known me from when I was young and aggressive or violent or whatever I was at the time, immature and didn't know how to act like a friend, that was kind of just how people saw me. And so even if I had changed, I didn't always get the opportunity for people to see me as someone different or older or more mature, or having learned from my mistakes. I was kept in a box, and kind of just the box was pushed to the side. And so while I like smaller communities because there's more accountability, there's often less crime. There's still crime. There's often less crime than in bigger areas. You get to know and really have a camaraderie with and have a lot in common with your neighbors, infinitely more than an urban area where it's fend for yourself, dog eat dog. It's just all competition, and you don't ever get to know or see the people even that you live close to, just because there's so many people. And I felt that even in college, there were a lot of like lecture halls that, or at least my college was smaller, so I think there was only 6,600 undergrad, but I did have a couple courses that were, and one in particular, it was a theater class, and it was like 200 plus people that were all in a lecture hall. And my brother went to Oregon State, and so that was 300 to 500 in many classes, especially the required first 2-year general liberal arts core classes. And it was like there's no relationship there. There's a lot less opportunity for knowing the names, knowing the context, and the reality of people's lives. It's more you're just one of a number. And kind of like what you were talking about, the restaurant. If the restaurant is a lot smaller, then everyone who's worked there, or you've heard stories of people who have worked there, and you might see them come in from time to time, and it's really fun and exciting. I don't know if it's exactly that same way when you're working for a bigger chain, because you're kind of just given an employee number, and then you're there for a short period of time or a long period of time, and then when you leave, then they might give you something for being there, a pen or a plaque or something, for your years of dedicated service, and then you're gone, and they replace you with a new employee number, and you're just a number. You might be more than just a number, or feel like more than just a number, or be treated like more than just a number by certain bosses or managers, but it's often too easy to fall in between the cracks and not be able to be known. And so in smaller communities, especially smaller like employers or smaller I don't know about smaller families, because families are typically small enough that you can still know most people if they're not living pretty far away. But yeah, it's just to be known. I think most people would prioritize or would desire to be known or feel known, or that they want to be seen and heard and valued and appreciated. And that, again, that's what I'm trying to do with this podcast. This podcast is really just emphasizing that normal people, average people exist, and that we're all unique and different, and we all have our own value and opinions. And this is a platform just, one of many that is a place where you can share those and have other people really tune in and see you and hear you and listen to what you have to say. And I've loved that opportunity of feeling known by, say, teachers or professors, say like on a first name basis, or maybe not the administrative staff, being on a first name basis with my parents when I was getting in trouble a lot in middle school and before. But yeah, I think that it's too easy to get lost in a sea of people when you're one of millions or billions in the world or in a certain area or hundreds of millions. And so really getting connected and involved in your local communities is necessary, whether it be a church or a charity or a family or a community where you're really able to be a part of a smaller organization where you can still accomplish things and
Yeah.
work for a purpose that is bigger than yourself than you could ever do on your own.
On that topic of being known,
Yeah.
I think it's actually really important. Like you were saying, in smaller communities,
Mhm.
that Hawaii, most of the people that get promoted or
Mhm.
have like reputation. There is a reputation that is very real,
Okay.
and being known will get you places.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah. In your own experience, or people you have known have had more opportunities
Both,
when they've known someone over knowing something. Yeah.
both. It's about like being able to work correctly.
Hmm.
But then there's some people that commit everything into work, but then there's some people that do just enough and then
Yeah.
talk. And that's how
Yeah.
they climb up.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true.
Right. And
Yeah.
I seen it happen at Ruby Tuesday. There's a guy I know who's probably like the best worker I've ever seen. His name is
Hmm.
J Rod, and he's like, I've seen him get screwed over by managers, by like other people
Hmm.
countless times.
Wow.
And it's just
Hmm.
it's because of that whole being known thing, like other people being able to climb through just talking
Yeah.
and knowing people.
Yeah.
It's a little bit toxic.
It can be. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's life, I guess.
I mean, life is many things. Life is complicated. I don't think it's any one thing. And I'm not saying that you were saying that. There's so many different levels and factors, and we are social creatures. We form habits socially, we form communities and patterns, organized patterns, intelligent patterns often show some assembly of intelligence or order. And many species do that, but we're a very social species as a human race, in that we desperately need relationship. I mean, have you ever seen, kind of lighthearted, but the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks?
No, I haven't.
Oh, interesting. So basically the whole plot of the movie is that he is the only survivor of a plane crash, and there's some packages that float onto the island that he finds himself on. And so he has to find a way to live and get back to civilization, but he's the only one there. And it's one of the iconic, memorable things about the film. He creates one of the things that's in a package, because he starts opening the package. He doesn't, they're at that point, they're no one's, or they might be meant for people, but they're never going to get there. And he's just trying to survive. So he opens many of these packages except for one, which kind of is his motivation to get back, because he's going to deliver this package because he knows where the house is or who the family is, or something. And so one of these packages is a volleyball. And so he makes a face with like his own blood and hay for hair, and he calls it Wilson because Wilson is the manufacturer, maker of the volleyball, but he's just living with it and kind of talking to it. It's a very capturing film in just our need or desire for social interaction. And like, one of the worst punishments that we have in our criminal justice system, at least here in the world, is solitary
Isolation.
confinement. Yeah, isolation. And so you are restricted and limited and prevented from seeing anyone else, talking to anyone else, and being around anyone else, because either you're a danger to others or even yourself. It's protecting you by isolating you. And I think that that's actually kind of, in a way, been what many of or much of the last few years has been, in terms of isolate you to protect you. But there are natural consequences to that. And one of the consequences is that, as being social creatures, our social relationships are now suffering, or many of us are seeing those that are suffering, either if all of our interaction is online or behind a screen name, or we don't see the human or the humanity behind, say, a message that we read or a post or a news article. And so we lose a lot of that context. I know in my experience through university in the communication classes I've taken that very little of communication actually happens in the channel of words and language, that so much else comes from facial expressions and body language and tone and pitch and many of these other factors that are all context that go into how a message is sent and received. You can say the same words, but in a different way, and it can convey a completely different meaning. And so the lens by which we view the world is a way that we try to extract meaning from messages that are sent by someone else that we are trying to receive. And it's just the last few years have been so toxic. I like that word, not because I like the reality of it, but because it's so accurate in terms of what people now think is normal or the new normal, or if we'll ever get back to normal, whatever that means, because we have lost so much more than it seems like on the surface. Obviously, the lives due to the pandemic and health crises and the mental health crisis and so many other things, the relationships, many close friends and family that maybe you had healthy conversations with at other times, that now those conversations aren't so healthy, or you might not even be talking because you said one thing or they said one thing, and now that relationship has at least been suspended for a time or for a while. And it really changes you generally when you're put in a position of, well, now I feel more isolated than ever. Like, we're more connected than ever, but connected to a screen, connected to a phone, connected to a device. I mean, what are we watching this on? I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm saying that there's an inherent something that's gained from that, but there's also an inherent something that's lost from that. And we have to just be aware of
Yeah.
what we're losing by doing this. I know that recently, small tangent, but I've been going outside a lot more, trying to, as I'm physically capable after my surgery, but trying to just enjoy being outside, the weather and the sounds and the wildlife and the sights and the sunsets and sunrise and the moon and all these things. And it's just, it's something that maybe was a lot more common back when for a time, but it's too easy to have it be something that you're that you take for granted, or that you don't prioritize. And I even had someone comment on it and say, wow, that's a beautiful view from our apartment. And when we first moved in, that was absolutely something that we saw and we're like, oh, look at this is so amazing with the creek behind. And then some of that was lost and it was just normal. And so I think that there's so many things about our lives that we just now think are normal, that we just forget the blessings and forget the luxury and forget, something that we have that others don't. And it's humbling. And I mean, when you really think about it, like, there's so much that life has to offer that we're just missing because our heads are buried in our phones or in our tablets or in social media accounts and TikTok and all these other things, that really, when you take time to get out of your own mind or your own house and live life and experience all that life and earth and nature and the universe and just social relationships and humanity, all of that has to offer, there's so much more to life than what we've been experiencing or what others have been trying to protect us from.
Yeah, see, there's a whole, like, another side of the spectrum too. That's why I think work is good, because
Mhm.
you're forced to interact with people.
Mhm.
You're forced to get out, do things for yourself.
Yeah.
You're forced to keep yourself running, forced to live life. You're basically forcing yourself to live life.
Yeah. And your purpose, I mean, you're seeing the tangible value that you are bringing to other people.
The ultimate reward in working hard is the sense of pride
Yeah.
you get after. That's
Accomplishment.
probably,
Yeah.
yes, that's probably like the best thing about work, I think.
A lot of people just don't end up accomplishing something,
Uh,
which, I mean, they put in so much
that's
hard
true.
work, but they don't have much to show for it. And so they feel undervalued or under recognized, or that they have a lack of purpose because, well, what have they done? And they look back and they're like, well, did I just waste all this time?
It's not wasted time because it's something that you get better at every single time.
Hmm.
I mean, some people learn slower than others and faster,
Yeah.
but ultimately, it's like it's not wasted time if you think about it, because the next time you do it, it's going to be faster and then
Yeah.
faster. and faster. And I don't know, that's my argument for that, that whole tangent.
Yeah. Well, as you get older, like, so when you're younger, often you just want to be older. You see the things that older people have or that they can do, and you're like, oh, I just, I wish I
Right.
could, I wish I was old enough to drive. I wish I was old enough to, not have my parents tell me what to do, or I wish I was old enough to, not have a bedtime. All these things when you're super young. And then when you get older, you're like, oh, now I have responsibilities. I might want to do these things, but I can't because other things take higher priority, like children or a marriage or career, and bills are a big one. And so there might be things that you want to do, but you feel limited that you can't do. But then when you're older, you might not even be able to do them or do them as fast or as well. And so if you're young and you're not old enough, but then you're old enough and you don't have the time,
And
but
you're not young
then
enough.
and then you finally have the time and the money, but you don't have the capability, the health to do it. At what time are you going to choose to do something, to do anything, to accomplish something, to build something, to create something, to learn a new thing, or to do something that you've always wanted to do or dreamt of doing, but you always said, tomorrow I'll be able to do it, or next week? You can choose to do that today. It might take preparation, it might take time, but if that's your end goal, there's no time like the present to do it, because there's no time other than the present. At every moment in time, it's always the present.
Yes.
A funny thing about that, there was a quote I had heard, and someone had said, look at this picture of me when I was younger. It's like every picture of you is a picture of you when you were younger, because it's just a snapshot of kind of like a moment in time. But if you say that you'll do it tomorrow, well, no, you'll do it today, just a later today, because tomorrow will still be today when tomorrow comes. If you're going to put something off, why are you putting it off? What is more important? And why wait? If you can do it now, then do it now if it's important enough to do it.
What if
Well,
someone walked up to you and was like, "Hey, look at this picture of me when I was older"?
Doctor Who or time traveling? Oh yeah. There have been many conspiracies about that. Just people who have, come in and had accounts or posted certain things or said this is going to happen at this time. And then something that happens, people might say, oh, that could be what they were talking about. Or, oh, this has to be what they were referencing. Oh, yeah. And there have been several people, apparently. I mean, just a random search of the internet can find people who have claimed to be from the future, say that at this time there's going to be this thing that happens and you better be ready for it. But then they're very descriptive, and it's not necessarily vague that a whole plethora of things could fall under it, but not wanting to give away too much information to then have other people manufacture it. But just, I don't know, as if time travel is possible. And I remember being in middle school.
Honestly,
Go
I
ahead. Yeah.
don't think anyone can mess with the speed of time, because
Okay.
time is just constant.
Is time
I don't,
constant though? Can't it be affected by
yes.
things like gravity and a medium that's traveling through and your relative speed? Like you can have the same synchronized clock at, say, like the peak of a mountain and sea level, and have them over time show a difference. And so is time relative to the observer, or is it a constant thing that's constant always and everywhere?
It's a constant thing. Well, I don't know. I'm not that educated,
Yeah.
but I don't know. You can feel time. Like,
True, but time can fly, or you can feel that time is going super slowly. I mean, yes, a second is a second, a minute is a minute, and it can feel like it's going by super quickly or super slowly based on your awareness of time versus your attention being on something else. A watch clock never moves. There's a cliche about that. And
right.
so, or time flies when you're having fun. All of those things are basically, while everyone has the same amount of time, it doesn't always, like, you can look back and in the moment, it might feel like you have a ton of time or you have no time at all, or just time is passing super slowly. And then when you look back, you're like, oh man, the last 2 years or 10 years just went by so fast. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, there's a subjective, like, say, impression or awareness or observation of time. But as I've done more research into it, so that was the story I was about to say, is that when I was in middle school, I remember completely unprompted, unresearched, I had an idea about, okay, so if speed of light is the fastest thing that exists in the universe, basically like the speed limit of the universe or the boundary, then nothing can go faster than the speed of light. But time exists. And so if time exists, say, like as a
If
speed, then
I just
time
want to
can't go
say,
faster than the speed of light, right?
I think if time travel were real, then parallel universe theory would be real, because in order to go back in time and you're changing a bunch of stuff, you have to alter the reality of everybody. And then how many splits are you going to make? And then if time travel is real in the future, how many people are going to be altering time?
Yeah. And
then how many
and then
universes
what
are
was
you
the
going to
original
create out of
exactly?
that?
Yeah, or messing up the space-time continuum or the butterfly effect in Jurassic Park. Yeah, and that's actually super interesting that you mentioned that. Even if time travel were possible, I don't think that we could go backwards in time. I think that we could only time travel into the future. Hello, Peter from the future. So funny that we're talking about time travel. There was no way to salvage this part of the video. So I'm just going to put this in and hope that it clarifies any kind of miscommunication. I did not communicate this well during the episode of the podcast. So effectively, when I was in middle school, I had thought of this hypothesis that time travel would only be possible in one direction into the future until we found some way to surpass the speed of light that is the perceived or believed speed limit of the universe. If time exists, then time must be within the speed limit of the universe, therefore must not exceed the speed of light. Therefore, the only way to accelerate yourself forward in time relative to other observers of time would be to accelerate yourself up to a faster speed, any faster speed, but over enough distance that you would be able to notice a difference in aging. And so I go on here to talk about a race, 100-year race, basically 100 light years of distance. And so how far is time ahead of you? Time is going at the same speed at most of the speed of light. Therefore, we calculate 1 light year as 1 year. And so that would be 100 years. The distance of time ahead of you would be 100 light years. However, if you're going faster in the universe, any degree faster, then time is technically progressing away from you more slowly than someone who's standing still. So that was just to clarify. I hope I can put this in there and give context to what I was attempting to explain, but utterly failed an hour later of editing to find out that I'm not going to use it at all. So anyway, that was what I was talking about, and I hope that you at least understand the concept of the race hypothesis that I had, and that was similar to what other famous physicists have hypothesized as well, in that we might be able to time travel forward in time, but not back in time, and yet video editing exists. And so during post-processing, when I was editing, I am able to put this in the future. So anyway, maybe it is possible. Who knows? All right, back to the video. Would you experience time in the same way, or would things not moving experience time
let me put it this way. Time,
Yeah.
I say time is constant because it just exists
Yeah.
differently in, other areas. But
Okay.
wherever you are, time is constant.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're, traveling through time or doing whatever, like if you somehow were like, like in the movies where the guy goes into space, comes back, he's all young and all his, friends are
Yeah.
old and dying.
Yeah.
It's like time just exists differently in that,
But time affected you
area.
differently. And so relative, you are less aged than, or in that example you gave, if you say traveled across the universe and back approaching the speed of light, you might still be relatively young because you were traveling at great speed for that entire time, come back, and people who were not moving relatively anywhere near as fast as you were now are aging much faster because you calculate age by, or time, how time has affected you, or how much time you've experienced based on your speed within the universe. And so things traveling or expanding, universe expanding at the speed of light, maybe hasn't aged in the same way, but by the time it gets to us, the light gets to us, or how we can observe it, then we can only see it from our own perspective. And so that was, anyway. So when I was in middle school, I conceptualized a thing completely unwarranted, and I had said, well, what if you could travel through time, but only into the future, because you just accelerate yourself up to crazy fast speeds, approaching the speed of light, and then say use gravity or something to pull yourself back, decelerate, and then accelerate in the other direction, or vector, in that now you come back. And then I found out that was actually something that had been theorized theorized or that has been hypothesized by, I don't know, Albert Einstein, I think, maybe not, or some physicist, but basically the theory is that you wouldn't experience time going quickly until you compared yourself relative to another observer of time, and how you observe time and how they observe time was different based solely on the speed that you were traveling. But what's the reference point? Is the reference point something that's not moving in the universe? Is everything moving in the universe? And how fast are things actually moving? All of that stuff would get so incredibly complicated that you wouldn't even necessarily know. You might be able to propel yourself into the future, but how much energy would that take? And would it be safe? And how long would it take? Like, how much food would your body need? And yeah, so I mean, it was just interesting to have thought, oh, this might be possible, and the way it might be possible is this, and then just to put it into a race, measure age as how far time, the speed of light has gotten away from you, and just saying speed of time cannot be faster than that, and then having that be something that has already been thought of by other great minds in history. It was just interesting. Anyway, that wasn't as short of a tangent as I thought, but yeah, it was 14 minutes. But just what could be possible, we don't even know. There's so many things that we may still have yet to learn or experience or to advance in terms of technology or information and understanding of the universe or the known universe as humanity continues to age and grow and learn and develop and create. I mean, they're talking of putting people on Mars and colonizing Mars or terraforming other planets and building habitats that are fully livable on other planets. And I mean, it's just crazy to think what might be possible in my lifetime, just in 20 years or 40 years or 60 years, where the world might be. And then looking at people who are 60, 70, 80, 90 years old today and seeing where life was, where culture was, and how much has changed and been developed in the time since then. I mean, just over my lifetime, just less than 30 years, there's been the full advancement of smartphones and technology. And I remember a flash drive, and the flash drive, or even a floppy disk, like just all these, I don't want to say archaic, but older ways of doing things that now seem archaic because of the relative, how much, like a game. I remember the first time that I had a game, it was Spore, that was too big to fit on my flash drive. And I'm like, wow, how can a game be bigger than 4 gigabytes at the time? And it was a 4 gigabyte flash drive. And I'm like, this is crazy. And then now there's games like Call of Duty that are what, 100 or 270, 280 gigabytes as the game itself. And I'm like, my hard drive is only 500 gigabytes. And so it's crazy to see, like, and people in the future might be looking at this, or future, the new present, and looking at this in the past and seeing, oh, what are gigabytes? Oh, now we use terabytes or petabytes. It's like, it's completely out of the realm of our processing at so many times, just the potential and how quickly that could happen. And so when we talk about, or when people talk about the history or the age of the universe, if all of this has happened in the last, say, 30 years or the last 60 years in terms of the development of these technologies and digital space and internet, why did it take us so long? What were we learning in the last 30,000 years or 6,000 years or however long humans have been on the earth? And then even like dinosaur fossils, like, why are there not more fossils that we find if they had supposedly lived for hundreds of millions of years or billions of years or over a span of time? It's interesting how fast life can breed. And so I don't know, I'm amazed there. And that's a whole nother conversation, obviously, but just there's so much to learn and experience in life that we have, and we only have a very limited amount of time, limited amount of resources, and limited amount of knowledge that we can gain and store in our brains.
You know what's funny, Peter?
Yeah, what's up?
We were talking about you can only be like so prepared.
Yeah.
What if, like, if another like planet wiping crisis happened?
Yeah.
We we could be prepared all we want, but planet wiping could freaking, another meteor, let's say, right?
Yeah.
That's no one's living through that.
Or Yellowstone, like the mega
Yeah,
volcano that is Yellowstone. I know that we're supposed to have the big one here, is like overdue by several hundred years, and at least on the West Coast, and that there's going to be a massive earthquake that is said to be something that is going to set off Yellowstone's megavolcano. And then when that goes off, it's going to completely change the landscape or eradicate a certain amount or space, of land that's currently existing. And so there's always the
So then what
potential for
if,
that. Yeah.
yeah,
What?
if that happens, then another, a new form of life were to happen. It's like another evolution. Like it goes from dinosaurs to humans to aliens. I don't know.
I'm not
But
sure.
like that
Well,
would
we can only create, like, if humans reproduce, we can only make humans. So if dogs reproduce, they can only make dogs. If dinosaurs reproduce, if reptiles reproduce, say they were the same kind, that they could only make that same kind. And so I don't know exactly how you just get new kinds.
they'd have
And
to
then can
survive
they interbreed with
underwater,
others?
like how
Maybe. Yeah.
it actually happened in the well, I say actually happened, but from what I learned in school, right?
Yeah.
Like the ice age, everything's living underwater, and then all of a sudden these guys walk onto the land, and then they turn into monkeys, and then but then that could happen again, right? But then you think we look the same? Probably not, huh?
I don't
Probably
even
look
think we look
completely
the same
different.
now. I don't like it's just
Yeah, probably.
like
Honestly.
people DNA. So DNA is basically the language of life. And so if we talk about, like, say, the English language, if we look at a book, like each person's DNA could basically be written out in a book in, say, like a language. And then that language, that book is you. And so, but another assortment of that language, of those letters in that book, is an entirely new life. And so over time, the language of DNA has enough information, and just the way things are, there's enough information in our DNA code to produce offspring infinitely. But that offspring is obviously going to look different as you take DNA from this culture or this other subset of people in a different place. But I mean, like, at the origin of humanity, was there only one? Was there only two? And then, or whatever it was, and then
happen? How did that even happen?
yeah. I mean, what came first, the lungs or the heart or the brain? Like,
Homo
you could
sapien decided to
the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. So that was, that's like the muscular skeletal system. Yeah. It's just, I mean, it's just interesting. Like, when you were conceived, in terms of like a sperm meeting an egg, and now that DNA code is complete, and it has everything it needs to become everything you are today. And that amazes me. And not only that, but that women are born with all of the eggs that they'll ever have in their entire lifetime, while men continue to produce more. It's just, I don't know. Like, when you say, like, I'm still on the, what will we look like? I can't, like, obviously I can look at people around the world, and 8 billion people, or just near that, and see that everyone is different. I mean, I even actually, so I was the youngest of the youngest. My parents were both the youngest of their siblings, and I was the youngest of them. And so I didn't really grow up around many babies, or at least have experience with that. And I naively thought that, oh, well, babies all look the same to a certain degree. Like, they're all this big, and their facial structures are all, like, the same. I was so wrong. And now, I mean, like, I can look at adults and see, obviously, the faces and body types and things of adults look different. But after I had my child, children also look very different from one another, and or babies, like, just all through growing up, you can see 50 babies or 500 babies all lined up, and no two look the same. And it was designed that way by the language of life and amino acids. And it's crazy. I mean, just the potential for what kind of life can exist. Is this all the life we'll ever have? And therefore species can become extinct. And unfortunately, when the species are extinct, there are no new species. I mean, like, and that's, like, currently there's the kingdom, order, phylum, class, genus, order, species, or whatever that in the hierarchy, or the 6 kingdoms of life. And so you have the Animalia kingdom. And anyway, so as that breaks down, you could have many species that can interbreed. Say, like, you have many species of dogs, but they can all breed and make a dog. It would just be a new breed of dog, but we would call it a crossbreed, but someone in the future might call it a new breed because they look very different. And so I think the evolution actually happens very, very, very quickly within kinds. You could have a very short amount of time and have two very, very different looking dogs because you had a breed, say like a Dalmatian and a Rottweiler, and now you get a very new breed of dog. It's not a purebred, but it looks very different than both of its ancestors. Would we call that a new species? Well, no, we would just understand that, you couldn't categorize every single species. And so when we talk about humans, it's not that there's different breeds of humans. It's just that the DNA over time from common ancestors has then isolated itself within a geographical location, and mutations over time, or adaptations or evolution over time within the human kind, or Homo sapiens, has morphed. And effectively, I mean, we don't call it breeds of humans, but humans can breed with other humans because we're all humans. But that DNA has been isolated to different areas. And so, like, if you take a DNA test, they'll say that you have this DNA in you from your ancestry. You might be this much percent, 4%, 0.4% of DNA comes from this area. We know that because there are very specific things that were typically kept to a certain area. And in those cultures in history, it might have been seen as taboo or not okay to marry and breed with humans of other breeds from other areas around the world or other cultures, and introduce now brand new DNA into, and over time. And so the second law of thermodynamics is entropy. And so everything turns to chaos. And so over time, maybe the DNA of humans was more perfect. And so even like maybe relationships where you have, say, someone breeding with someone within the same family wasn't seen as taboo because there was no one else to breed with. And it didn't have the same kind of destructive effects and catastrophic effects on life with mutations and things like that you see today, but that it was maybe at the time seen as normal. And because there was, again, no one else, and DNA might have been more perfect at that time. And so over time, over all of human history, our DNA could have in some way become corrupted or damaged in some way. And so I have no clue what life will look like in how many years, because will it still be human life? Or at that point, like, what will they even call it? Will they call it different breeds? Will we just be another species that existed on the planet, and there will be something after us? And how will it evolve? Will it be, I don't know. Like, I don't think that even if aliens exist, which, I mean, that'd be pretty cool, to get to meet someone from a whole nother planet. Like, I talk to people from a different country or different state. Like, that would be cool to meet someone and talk to them from a different planet, provided that we could communicate in some way and effectively. But I don't know. I mean, it's kind of cool to think about at times, but does that change my life? Is it going to happen in my lifetime? And is it something that is worth my time to prioritize? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. And I think there's a lot of questions in life that we may never get the answers to, and we just have to live with that and be okay with that.
Yeah.
So why does certain things happen? I don't know. We have control over some things, they have control over some things, and just that's the order of the world. Sometimes the order of the world, when people don't respect the authority or the power that, say, Mother Nature has in terms of fire or hurricanes or tsunamis, that if we don't respect the power that happens because of, cause and effect, it's all just cause and effect in an ecosystem or a habitat, that one thing led to another. There was a shift in plate tectonics that led to a great tsunami wave that built over thousands of miles into, like, it's all just we need to learn to understand as best as we can things and have a healthy fear or respect of that which has authority over us. And we might have some authority over other people as well, like drunk drivers. If you are on the road, you could be hit by a drunk driver and by no fault of your own end up losing your life. And, like, is that your fault? Is that their fault? Or is it just a cause and effect of someone making a choice because they had authority, quote, and capacity to administer that outcome, because we have a free will to get in a car and use a car as a tool to cause damage to life and order in the world. So it actually, when you have children, you'll absolutely know the house isn't clean unless you work to keep it clean or make it clean. And toddlers are very good, especially children in general, or adults, humans actually are very good at making messes, but it takes work to clean up those messes. And so over time, as we use things, there will be garbage. Over time, as we use things, things will be consumed. Over time, we will make messes, and we'll need to eventually understand and learn that now it's time to clean up the mess. And that's going to take hard work and sacrifice and time. And it might not be fun, but it's what's necessary to make room for more. Like, and I tried it like with my children or child at the moment. Try to frame it in it's okay to make messes so long as we clean it up afterward. Like, it's really fun to make a mess sometimes, but if we're going to have that fun, we need to then come back behind and be responsible to then clean up the mess that we made. Peppa Pig is a TV show that our son loves, and it's a very big thing in that jump in muddy puddles. Yeah, it might be a ton of fun to jump in muddy puddles, and then it splashes everywhere, and then you have to come home and take a bath. And kids don't always love baths, or even teens don't always love showers. It's just the work that it takes to clean up after you had fun making a mess. And I think that exists in so many capacities in society, that if we make a mess, we need to take responsibility to work hard to clean up the mess. Some messes can't be cleaned up very well or very easily, or it's going to take way more than one person. And sometimes we have to clean up the mess of others that wasn't even our mess, but for us to have the best chance of future, or for us to have more opportunity, we need to be part of cleaning up the mess. I mean, like, there's so many different ways that could be applied to society and human history. And I mean, right now we're living in a very, very polarized, divided culture where people have felt marginalized for legitimate reasons in the past of past injustices or discrimination, unfair discrimination, things like that. And now we're left to clean up the mess. Everyone that's alive now is left to clean up the mess that was made by people before us. Are we going to then make a new mess, or are we going to clean it up? And someone's going to have to bear that injustice or the work that it's going to take to clean up the mess. There's people all the time that are making messes, whether they're old or young, and it's everyone's responsibility to clean up those messes, because we're all affected by them, whether it's garbage in the oceans, plastic or styrofoam or glass, or just terrible injustices that have happened, say like slavery. Everyone now can look back, no, because not everyone in the world is the same, and people see it. And some people even would say that we're still living in a state of indentured servitude or slavery or debt. So much of society is living in a debt, trying to just work to pay off their debt, and aren't really free in that capacity, that it just looks different and has a different name. But like many different cultures, many different races, many different countries had their people enslaved. Many different religions had their people enslaved or attacked or killed for all kind of unjust reasons. And we can look back at that, and hopefully we can learn from that and move on and work toward being better and not doing the same thing again, making an even bigger mess, because it's still an injustice, no matter if it's that in that direction or in that direction, and or this direction or that direction or that direction. It's the same thing, just at a different time. And so if you're trying to do the same thing to clean up a mess, you're just making a much bigger mess, and it's going to be that much harder to clean up that mess. And I don't think it's any one person or any one people group or any one culture or race or whatever that should be responsible for cleaning up the mess. It's literally everyone, because literally everyone is affected by the mess in some way. And if we want to move on and be better as a culture and learn from the past, we all need to be a part of that. And that means sometimes there's going to be work, there's going to be sacrifices, there's going to need to be communication and humility and listening and forgiveness. And forgiveness is a huge one. That's what's necessary for reconciliation, even in like personal relationships. If someone hurt you, the best thing that you can do is forgive them. And the best thing that they can do is forgive themselves, because you can't change the past. And so living in that shadow is never going to bring a better outcome than understanding that the past was in the past. Let's learn from the past and maybe guard ourselves or be more prepared for the future. But that doesn't define who you are today. It defines who you were, and you define who you are today based on what you've experienced in the past or what you've learned from other people who have experienced things in in the past. And that's literally the entire point of this podcast. Again, is just to gain knowledge and wisdom and experience and maybe hear new perspectives and opinions that you may not have yet been exposed to, and have solutions to societal issues or anything be proposed, or truths be proposed that maybe people can find value in and move forward with their life in a way that we're all better for it. And each of us is
Right.
better for it through work and sacrifice and taking the time to really listen and learn and grow.
I agree.
Yeah, I didn't mean to just take up a bunch of the time.
Oh, you're
there's
good.
so much there to unpack that you can't do it in just one episode. But I want to give you some more time to shine. We didn't have any other planned topics that we were going to talk about, I believe. Was there anything that you wanted to go back over or cover or share? I want to give you some time to give your thoughts on anything we've talked about so far, provided you can remember.
I think the only thing I want to say is sometimes it feels like it's really difficult to figure out what you really want to do, what makes you happy, and what needs to be done. And all those things are kind of separate, right?
Yeah.
You can't really have like too much of any of them. You got to balance, and I think balance is just something everyone's trying to find. I don't know if everyone's trying to find it, but
It's healthy.
I think it's something that's necessary.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everything in
To
moderation.
to keep things functioning, running. That's what I've been learning from just all the new experiences I've been experiencing. It's just like,
Yeah.
Everything's kind of connected in a sort of
Absolutely.
way. It's all just balanced. And it's crazy how life is, suspended in the universe, right? And everything's balanced. The way like everything's like the solar system is almost looks like it's tailored. But it's like,
Yeah.
Everything's in its own balance, everything's working with each other, and nothing's out of place. It's beautiful, really. But that's what I kind of got from all of our conversation.
Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, we are nearing the end of our time that we had scheduled. Is this something that, or did you have more time that you wanted to continue the discussion? Do you want to come back to the discussion at another time, or is this a good time to wrap up the conversation? What's your perspective on that?
It's probably a good time to wrap up.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I think that we covered a lot of topics today. A lot of tangents too, but I think that just, being aware of all dimensions of perspective and possibilities and potential is something that we can all benefit from. So,
and I think we can also
ahead.
benefit from doing the opposite as well. You know how they say ignorance is bliss.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, true.
It's good
The
to
less
take
you know,
time
the less
to
you,
worry.
feel you need
Yeah,
to know.
it's good to take
Yeah,
time to like just not worry.
true.
Even when
Yep.
something it feels like you have to worry about it, you have to have the self-control to make yourself not worry, unless it's something important, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, can't be about every little thing, right?
True. Yeah, so good. Pick your battles is one thing I've heard. It's like not everything is worth fighting tooth and nail and giving up yourself or your soul or your dignity or something for. Like, it's just, there's some things that are more important, and
Yeah.
to focus on what's most important, and to focus really on what you can control about your life. I know
Yep.
that there's a common, like,
Yep.
especially in AA circles, or
Focus on the
12
things
step
that are in your
programs.
control.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's the serenity prayer is one that's like, God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I can't control, recognize the things I can control, and know the difference, or something to that effect. That there's some things you can control in life, there's some things you can't control in life, and if you stress yourself out and you're super anxious and depressed about things you can't control, it's unnecessary and it's never going to change through any of your action. But you do have control over some things, and therefore the only way that your life is going to get better is to understand the difference between what you can control and what you can't control, and then to have the courage to act on that which you can control to influence things for the better. So I want to go ahead and give you the final breath, or the last breath. That is really what I do at the end of every podcast, is really give an opportunity for the guests to leave a final word in the minds or the ears of the listeners or the viewers of the video podcast, to really encapsulate something that you feel is most important, or maybe a motto for your life, or like the last words of someone's life are seen to be so important. So I want to give you that opportunity to say
I
something.
think I'd like to say, it's good to like be aware of your patterns and then try to deviate one day and just see what happens. I don't know. I think that's just good advice for anybody
Mhm.
because I feel like life moves in cycles and sometimes it's really easy to get caught up in a cycle and sometimes all you need to get out of a funk is just to deviate from the pattern a little bit. And it may not work the first time, but just gotta try a lot of things. You never know what you're gonna actually like. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It was just so good. I was just absorbing it all and just wanted. I was like more, more, more. All right, seeing
Oh,
if it kept going. Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. Um,
that's it.
Anyway, I had a lot of fun in this discussion. I did more
Me too,
talking than I
Peter.
had planned on, but we covered way more topics than we had planned on as well. So I'm glad that we were able to get your mic working again in terms
Yeah,
of being able to hear you clearly. I don't know, could you hear me clearly the whole time, or was I cutting
yeah,
out too?
yeah. I could hear you.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah. So
Yeah, I had a
we were
good
trying to
time
figure
talking
out.
to you, Peter.
Just for the viewers, we were trying to figure out the technical issues in the break. His mic was kind of cutting out on the recording. We didn't know if it was a hardware issue, if it was an internet issue that was out of our control, or if it was a Zoom related issue in terms of the recording and the software you were using and that service and server. And so we eventually figured it out. But that's why there's kind of like an awkward break in the middle. I'm going to try to make it less awkward through editing. But anyway, thank you so much, Casey, for sitting down with me today. And thank you so much to all you listeners or viewers out there. If you liked the discussion today, then you can go ahead and drop a follow or like or subscribe, drop a comment down below because we really want to encourage more discussion, more civil discussion, and people sharing their opinions, observations, and perspectives. And maybe you guys caught something that we didn't, or that we didn't spend a lot of time on, that you guys would like to break down a little bit further. Definitely drop that down in the comment section down below of whatever, whether it's YouTube or TikTok or wherever we post it, whether it be video or audio. We'd love to hear your feedback. So go ahead, and subscribing is always free, at least on YouTube. And so we really look forward to seeing you guys again next week. And Casey, where is somewhere that the viewers could find you or follow you if they want to hear more of what you have to say, or if they want to continue that conversation
Huh.
or learn more from you and see the content that you produce and the
I'm
value of your life?
I'm not really on any social media platforms actually.
Okay.
Uh, I have like a YouTube. That's it, and it's just like I have one or two videos. I think. But I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really make anything right now on the internet. I'm just living. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Well, you said right
Sorry.
now. So is that something we could look forward to in the future?
Maybe if I ever get into playing League again, like really
Okay.
seriously.
Yeah, for sure. Or
But
any new video game that hasn't even come out yet. Like, we don't even know.
or maybe, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Internet's
I
forever.
don't
And
know.
so maybe people are seeing this in 20 or 30 years and they're like,
I
oh, is
I've been
this guy
looking at
still around?
do you play chess, Peter?
I did definitely play chess. I used to play a lot more like in middle school and high school, but yeah,
Oh,
I love it.
we should play a game sometime because I've been
Totally.
trying to learn and it's really fun. I really love it.
Yeah. I look
So
forward to it.
yeah, I'll catch you later, Peter. My
All right.
battery is on 4%.
For sure. Thanks for talking today, Casey, and have a great week. Thanks so
You
much.
too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And thank you so much, viewers, for tuning in, listeners, viewers, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week. Till next time.